My 4-year-old daughter stood in Christmas pajamas at the open front door, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. "Mommy, don't come in," she whispered. "Daddy said she'll hurt me again." Then a woman laughed somewhere inside my house. For 1 second, I forgot how to breathe. It was 6:18 on the evening of December 22nd, and wet snow had started sticking to the sidewalks in our neighborhood outside Stafford, Virginia. I had just come from Dulles after 8 months on a classified overseas assignment. My wool coat was still buttoned over my dress uniform. A green duffel hung from one shoulder, and under my other arm I carried a stuffed bear wearing a red Santa hat. I had pictured Lily running down the porch steps. Instead, she stood barefoot on the cold tile, one hand gripping the doorframe, the other stretched out like she was trying to hold back a truck. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "look at me." Her cheeks were wet. Her breathing came in little hiccups. Behind her, the living room glowed with warm yellow lights. The tree was in the corner where I always put it, but everything else looked wrong. My silver star ornaments were gone. So were the framed pictures from our trip to Cape May. A new wooden sign hung over the fireplace. The Hale family, Daniel, Vanessa, and Lily. My stomach tightened. Then I heard that voice again. Lily shut the door. "Your father said no visitors." Vanessa. My younger half-sister stepped into view wearing my cream Christmas sweater, the one my mother had given me before she died. She was holding a wine glass and smiling like she had been expecting an audience. "Becca," she said, "you're early." Daniel appeared behind her with a bourbon and eggnog in one hand. My husband of 11 years looked at me as if I were a delivery driver who had brought the wrong package. "You were supposed to be back after New Year's," he said. "I got released early. You should have called." I stared at him. Why is our daughter afraid to let me into my own house? Lily lowered her arms just enough for me to see a yellowing bruise circling her left wrist. I crouched slowly. "What happened here, baby?" She looked over her shoulder before answering. Vanessa spoke first. "She fell at preschool." Lily's eyes dropped to the floor. I had spent most of my career learning how to notice what people avoided. Daniel's phone was already raised at chest-level, camera pointed toward me. Vanessa stepped closer and brushed hard against my shoulder. "She's been acting out ever since you abandoned her," she said. Every muscle in my body locked. I wanted to grab my daughter, shove past them, and demand answers until somebody told the truth. But Daniel was waiting for exactly that. So I reached into my coat pocket, started an audio recording, and kept my voice level. "Lily," I said, "did somebody hurt you?" Daniel's smile disappeared. He reached for her arm. "Go upstairs. Your real family is talking." That was when I understood this wasn't a surprise reunion gone wrong. They had planned for me to come home. I stepped across the threshold before Daniel could stop me. "My name's still on the deed," I said. "You don't get to tell me I can't come into my own home." Vanessa folded her arms, but moved aside just enough to let me pass. Daniel stayed close behind me, his phone still pointed in my direction. The house smelled like cinnamon candles and baked ham. It should have felt like Christmas. Instead, it felt like walking into someone else's life. I set my duffel beside the staircase and looked around slowly. The family pictures over the fireplace had changed. The framed photo of Daniel and me dancing at my retirement ceremony from my first enlistment contract was gone. So was the picture of Lily sitting on my shoulders at Yorktown Beach. In their place hung a professionally printed Christmas portrait. Daniel, Vanessa, Lily. All three wore matching red sweaters. Vanessa had one hand resting on Lily's shoulder like she'd always belonged there. My eyes drifted toward the coat closet. Women's boots, women's scarves, a long beige coat that definitely wasn't mine. She hadn't been visiting. She'd been living here. "For how long?" I asked quietly. Daniel shrugged. "A few months." "A few months?" "We needed help." "You hired my sister to move into my house." Vanessa laughed. "You make it sound so dramatic." I looked at Lily. "Honey, when did Aunt Vanessa start sleeping here?" Before she could answer, Daniel cut in. "That's enough." "No," I said, "it's not." Lily stood frozen beside the staircase. When Vanessa snapped her fingers, Lily flinched. Actually flinched. That tiny movement hit me harder than anything they'd said so far. Children don't flinch around people they feel safe with. I followed Lily into the kitchen. She stopped in front of the refrigerator. Before opening it, she looked toward Vanessa. "May I have some water?" Vanessa nodded without looking up from her phone. "You know where the cups are." My heart dropped. 4-year-olds don't ask permission for water in their own home. Not unless they've learned there will be consequences if they don't. I crouched beside Lily while she filled a small plastic cup. "Sweetheart," I whispered, "are you okay?" She stared into the water. I missed you, Mommy. Those 4 words almost broke me. I wrapped my arms around her. She hugged me back for exactly 2 seconds, then she suddenly pulled away. Her eyes filled with panic. I can't. Why? She glanced toward Vanessa again. I'll get in trouble. I slowly stood. Daniel had been watching every second. You see, he said, you confuse her. I ignored him. Instead, I walked toward the hallway leading to my home office. The keypad on the door blinked red. My code no longer worked. What did you change in there? My office now, Daniel answered. Your office? You've been gone. I turned the handle anyway. Locked. You had no right. I had every right. He reached into a folder sitting on the dining room table and slid several papers toward me. I figured you'd react like this. Across the top of the first page were words I never imagined seeing. Petition for legal separation. Attached was a proposed temporary custody agreement. Daniel wanted primary custody. He wanted exclusive use of the house. He wanted me to have supervised visits with Lily whenever military duties allowed. I looked up slowly. You've already hired an attorney. A while ago. Vanessa smiled over the rim of her wine glass. If you'd just sign it tonight, we can all move on. I looked from one face to the other, then back to Lily. She was quietly coloring at the kitchen table, pressing so hard with the crayon that the paper was beginning to tear. I slid the papers back toward Daniel. I'm not signing anything. Vanessa stepped closer until we were almost shoulder to shoulder. My advice? She said softly. Don't make this ugly. Then she deliberately bumped my shoulder. Not hard. Just enough. Daniel's phone tilted upward. Still recording. Waiting. Trying to catch the moment I lost control. I understood exactly what they were doing. I took one slow breath. Then another. Instead of raising my voice, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. Stafford County Sheriff's Office. The dispatcher answered. My 4-year-old daughter just told me someone in this house has been hurting her. I'd like to request a welfare check. Daniel didn't look worried. He smiled. You really should have called sooner, he said calmly. I already called them this afternoon. At that exact moment, red and blue lights flashed across the living room windows, painting the Christmas tree in alternating colors. Daniel leaned close enough for only me to hear. Now let's see who they believe. The first deputy through the door was a man about my age with gray around his temples. His partner, a younger woman, followed him inside carrying a notepad. Evening, he said. I'm Deputy Collins with the Stafford County Sheriff's Office, who made the call. I answered. Before I could explain another word, Daniel stepped forward with a tired smile. My wife's been overseas for months. She just got home unexpectedly. He looked embarrassed, almost apologetic. I think she's under a lot of stress. The deputy nodded politely. We'll talk to everyone separately. Daniel didn't hesitate. I'd appreciate that. That confidence bothered me more than anything else. He wasn't nervous. He was prepared. Within minutes, we were sitting in different rooms. Deputy Collins spoke with me in the dining room while his partner talked with Daniel in the living room. I told him exactly what Lily had whispered. I showed him the bruise on her wrist. I explained my military assignment had prevented regular communication because of security restrictions. He listened carefully. Then he asked quietly, Do you have any proof she was abused? I have my daughter's words. I understand. He wasn't dismissing me. He was being honest. Meanwhile, Daniel was already handing over paperwork. A few minutes later, Deputy Collins returned, holding a manila folder. I'm going to need you to explain something. He opened it. Inside was a police report. Filed that morning, 12 hours before my flight landed. According to the report, Daniel feared I might become violent after returning from deployment. I stared at the date. This is impossible. There are also text messages. He handed me printed screenshots. The messages appeared to come from my phone number. One read, If you keep Lily from me, somebody's going to regret it. Another said, I'm done playing nice. My stomach dropped. I never sent these. Daniel spoke from across the room. Maybe you don't remember. I looked directly at him. I remember every message I've ever sent my husband. Deputy Collins asked if anyone else had access to my account. I thought about it. My iPad. Daniel looked away for just a fraction of a second. It was almost nothing. But after 22 years in uniform, I'd learned that the smallest hesitation often meant the biggest truth. The deputy made a note. Daniel wasn't finished. I also have videos. He played a short clip on his phone. It showed me yelling in our driveway almost a year earlier. No context. No beginning. No ending. Just me raising my voice. What the deputy couldn't see was why. Daniel had left Lily alone in his SUV outside a grocery store while he ran in for one thing. She'd been buckled into her car seat for nearly 20 minutes on a 90-degree afternoon. I had screamed because I thought she could have died. Now it looked like I simply exploded for no reason. One clip after another painted the same picture. Angry wife. Calm husband. Concerned father. The younger deputy came downstairs holding Lily's little hand. She knelt beside her. "Honey, can you tell me who hurt your wrist?" Lily looked toward Daniel. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. She lowered her head. "I don't know." My heart broke. Not because she lied, because she was terrified. The deputies exchanged a glance. "We're contacting Child Protective Services," Collins said. "We'd also like a pediatrician to examine her." Within an hour, Lily was on her way to Mary Washington Hospital with a child welfare investigator. I reached for her as she walked past me. "I'll see you soon, sweetheart." She clutched the stuffed bear I'd brought home from the airport. "I love you, Mommy." "I love you more." I assumed she'd be coming with me afterward. Instead, the investigator pulled me aside outside the hospital. "Until we sort out these conflicting allegations, Lily can't go home with either parent tonight." The words hit harder than any battlefield briefing I'd ever received. "What?" "We have an approved emergency placement." "My Aunt Carol," she nodded. I leaned against the wall outside the emergency entrance. The Christmas lights wrapped around the hospital shrubs blurred through my tears. I had come home to save my daughter. Instead, I couldn't even tuck her into bed. Back at the parking lot, my phone rang. Colonel Denise Carter. "Rebecca," she said gently, "I've already been notified about the domestic incident." I closed my eyes. Military commands heard everything. "If criminal allegations continue," she said, "your security clearance may be reviewed. I need you to stay calm." "I am calm." "No," she replied softly. "You're disciplined. Don't lose that now." That night I checked into a Holiday Inn Express off Route 1 because Daniel had already changed the locks. At 2:07 a.m. I sat on the edge of the bed still wearing my army trousers, staring at Lily's empty little Christmas stocking I'd packed months earlier. I wanted to drive back to the house. I wanted answers. Instead, I called military legal assistance. The attorney who answered listened quietly before asking one question. "What evidence," he said, "were they hoping you'd destroy by getting angry?" I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I met Rachel Kim at 9 o'clock the next morning in a small law office just off Courthouse Road in Stafford. She wasn't what I expected. No dramatic speeches. No expensive suit. She wore a navy cardigan, sensible shoes, and reading glasses that kept sliding down her nose while she reviewed my paperwork. After listening for nearly an hour, she folded her hands. "Rebecca, I'm going to tell you something you probably don't want to hear." "I'm listening." "This case isn't about proving your husband cheated." "I know." "It isn't about proving he's selfish either." She looked me straight in the eye. "It's about proving your daughter isn't safe." That sentence changed everything. Up until then, every thought in my head centered on Daniel and Vanessa. Rachel quietly shifted my focus back to Lily. "If we chase revenge," she said, "we'll lose sight of the child. Protect Lily first. The truth will take care of the rest." For the first time since landing in Virginia, I felt like someone was giving me a plan instead of sympathy. She asked me to rebuild the last 8 months, 1 week at a time. Who had seen Daniel? Who had watched Lily? Who lived close enough to notice changes? One name came to mind immediately. Marjorie Delaney, our next-door neighbor. She was 72 years old, retired after 35 years as an elementary school secretary, and knew more about our neighborhood than the Homeowners Association ever would. When I knocked on her door just after lunch, she opened it before I could ring the bell. "There you are," she said. Her sweatshirt read, "Not retired, just done with stupid people." For the first time in days, I almost smiled. She pulled me into a hug. "Oh, honey." I didn't know where else to go. "You came to the right porch." Inside her house smelled like coffee and homemade banana bread. She poured 2 mugs before I even sat down. "I figured you'd be back before Christmas," she said. "I was." She shook her head. "No, I mean I figured you'd come looking for answers." I stared at her. "You knew something was wrong?" I knew something stopped feeling right. She disappeared into her den and came back carrying a spiral notebook almost an inch thick. "I write everything down." What? "I've done it for 30 years. She handed me the notebook. Every page had dates, times, license plates, deliveries, arguments, visitors. "My grandson says it's an old lady hobby," she said. "I call it paying attention." I flipped to August. 3 weeks after I'd deployed overseas. One note immediately caught my eye. August 18th. Young blonde woman moved into Hale House. 4 suitcases, stayed overnight. Another. September 2nd, Lily crying outside for nearly 20 minutes. Daniel not home, blonde woman on phone inside. Then another. October 11th, preschool bus arrived. Lily never came out. My hands tightened around the notebook. You saw all this? I did. And nobody called me. Marjorie sighed. We thought you already knew. I swallowed hard. She walked me over to her kitchen window. You see that? Mounted beneath the porch roof was a Ring camera. I finally bought one after somebody stole my bird feeder. She grinned. Turns out it caught a lot more than squirrels. She opened the app on her tablet. The first video showed Vanessa arriving with grocery bags. Nothing unusual. The second showed Daniel carrying furniture into the house. Still nothing. Then she played one from early November. Vanessa opened the back door. Little Lily stepped outside wearing only socks. The temperature on the video read 38 degrees. Vanessa pointed toward the patio. Stay there until you learn to listen. The door closed. Lily sat on the concrete, hugging her knees. 5, 10, 15 minutes passed. Nobody came back. I felt my stomach twist. Marjorie quietly paused the video. I almost called the sheriff that day. You should have. I know. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then she opened another recording. This time there wasn't much to see, but there was plenty to hear. Vanessa's voice drifted across the fence. You'd better stop crying before your daddy gets home. Then another sentence. If your mommy loved you, she wouldn't have left. I closed my eyes. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. Marjorie reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I've got months of these. Rachel was right. Evidence. Not anger. Evidence. As I gathered my things to leave, Marjorie stopped me. Oh, one more thing. What? I noticed a moving company back in October. What were they moving? They carried 6 boxes out of your home office. I froze. My office? She nodded. And they loaded every one of them into a storage unit truck. An hour later, Rachel was studying my bank records when she suddenly leaned forward. Rebecca.
What?
I think I just found what those boxes were hiding. She turned her monitor toward me. A transfer. $78,400. Moved from my deployment savings into a joint business account owned by Daniel and Vanessa. I kept staring at the number on Rachel's computer screen. $78,400. It wasn't just money. It was 8 months of deployment pay, hardship pay, and the extra savings I'd put aside for Lily's college fund. I looked at Rachel. There has to be some mistake. She slowly shook her head. I wish there were. She enlarged the banking records. The transfer had happened 6 weeks earlier, authorized using a financial power of attorney. I immediately recognized my own signature. I signed that before I deployed. Rachel nodded. Most military families do. I gave Daniel permission to pay bills. And that's exactly what he appears to have used. She clicked through several more documents. The problem is, he didn't stop there. I leaned forward. He refinanced your home. What? He also opened a home equity line of credit. I felt sick. He couldn't. He could. Rachel pointed toward another page. You gave him authority to handle financial matters while you were overseas. I trusted him. I know. There wasn't a hint of judgment in her voice. Only facts. She printed the paperwork and spread it across the conference table. Mortgage documents, bank transfers, corporate filings. Then she circled one name with her pen. Hale Family Support Services, LLC. What is that? Rachel searched the Virginia Business Registry. It was created 4 months ago. She turned the monitor toward me. Owner, Daniel Hale. Managing partner, Vanessa Price. Business purpose, providing support services for military families. I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because I honestly didn't know what else to do. My husband started a business helping military families, using your deployment money. Rachel finished. We searched further. There was no office, no website, no employees, no clients, just a post office box in Fredericksburg. Rachel opened the account statements connected to the business. The first charge made my jaw tighten. A luxury SUV lease, registered to Vanessa. The second, designer furniture. The third, a beach vacation in North Carolina. Then came credit card payments, jewelry stores, spa weekends, boutique clothing shops. None of it had anything to do with helping military families. Daniel hadn't built a business. He'd built a lifestyle. With my paycheck. Rachel quietly organized the papers into neat stacks. This gets worse. I was afraid you'd say that. She slid over another document. The Stafford Regional Chamber of Commerce. Holiday Community Leadership Gala. December 24th. Featured honoree. Daniel Hale. Award. Community Family Champion. Below that was the reason. For extraordinary support of military families during overseas deployments. I stared at the page. They're giving him an award. For pretending to be the husband you've actually been. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, I whispered, I spent Christmas in a secured operations center halfway around the world last year. Rachel nodded. And he spent it building this image. Later that afternoon, I drove to Aunt Carol's house for my first supervised visit with Lily. She ran into my arms before the social worker even finished opening the door. For a few wonderful minutes, she acted like my little girl again. We colored Christmas trees, built a tower out of wooden blocks, read the Polar Express, then completely out of nowhere, she looked at me. Mommy, yes, sweetheart. Are you leaving again? The question caught me completely off guard. No. She looked uncertain. Daddy said the Army always takes you away. I swallowed hard. The Army asked me to serve. Will they ask again? I didn't answer immediately, because I honestly didn't know. Instead, I kissed the top of her head. I'm here today. She leaned against me. I like today. Those 4 simple words hurt more than any accusation Daniel had ever made. After the visit ended, Rachel called. I've received an offer. From Daniel. His attorney. I pulled into a parking lot outside a Starbucks. What does he want? Rachel read directly from the email. If you withdraw the child abuse allegations, agree to primary custody, and sign the separation agreement. Daniel will return half of the money. Half. Like he was negotiating over a used pickup truck instead of my daughter's future. For one terrifying moment, I actually considered it. Maybe ending the fight quickly would spare Lily. Maybe I could start over somewhere else. Rachel must have heard the silence. Rebecca, I'm listening. He isn't offering you peace. She paused. He's offering you pieces of what already belongs to you. I closed my eyes. She was right. This had never been about money, or the house, or even Daniel. It had always been about Lily. The next morning during another supervised visit, Lily sat quietly with a box of crayons. She didn't say much. She simply drew. When she finished, she handed me the picture. It showed 3 people. Vanessa, Lily, Daniel. Daniel was holding a phone. Vanessa's hand was raised. Above them, a tiny red camera. I couldn't stop looking at Lily's drawing. 3 stick figures, Daniel, Vanessa, Lily. Above Daniel's head was a little black rectangle with a blinking red dot. At first I thought it was just something a 4-year-old had scribbled. Then Rachel leaned closer. Ask her about the camera. The following afternoon we met again at Aunt Carol's house for another supervised visit. The child welfare investigator stayed in the next room while Lily and I sat on the living room rug, building a castle out of wooden blocks. I waited until she seemed relaxed. Then I picked up the drawing. Sweetheart, can Mommy ask you something? She nodded. What is this little black box? She looked at it for only a second. The camera. What camera? The one Daddy put on the bookshelf. My heartbeat slowed. Not because I was calmer. Because every instinct I had told me to listen carefully. What did the camera do? It watched. Watched what? She shrugged. Me. I kept my voice soft. What else? She lowered her eyes. Daddy said when Mommy came home. She stopped. It's okay. I had to stand by the door. My chest tightened. Why? So the camera could see. Rachel and I exchanged a quick glance. I turned back to Lily. What was the camera supposed to see? She whispered so quietly I almost missed it. Daddy said Mommy would get mad. She looked ashamed. I didn't want you to get mad. I reached over and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You never did anything wrong. She leaned against me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she said something I'll never forget. Daddy made me practice. My blood ran cold. Practice what? The crying. I felt the air leave my lungs. What do you mean? He said, she took a shaky breath. When Mommy comes home, stand by the door. Cry really hard. And don't let her in. I couldn't speak. Every horrible piece suddenly fit together. The rehearsed tears. Daniel recording me. Vanessa provoking me. The separation papers already waiting. None of it had been spontaneous. It was a trap. And Lily had been rehearsing her role for weeks. Rachel quietly excused herself and stepped outside to make a phone call. When she came back, she looked more determined than I'd ever seen her. "We're filing an emergency preservation request." "For what?" "The camera. If it still exists. If we're lucky." Within hours, a judge signed an order requiring Daniel to preserve every electronic device and security recording connected to the property. By the next morning, his attorney responded, "The camera had supposedly disappeared." "Convenient," Rachel muttered. She wasn't ready to give up. Neither was I. That afternoon, I drove back to Marjorie Delaney's house. She answered before I reached the porch. "I knew you'd be back." "We're looking for a security camera." She thought for a moment. "I never saw the camera." I nodded. "I figured." "But," she smiled, "I did see Vanessa throwing something away." She led me into her kitchen and opened the Ring app again. This was about 3 weeks ago. The video showed Vanessa carrying a black trash bag toward her SUV. She tossed it into the back before driving away. "Do you know where she went?" "No," I sighed. "So that's it." Marjorie frowned. "Not exactly." She enlarged the picture. "You see why I save everything." I leaned closer. I almost missed it. Resting inside the open trunk, half hidden beneath wrapping paper, was a white camera box. The serial number sticker faced directly toward Marjorie's driveway camera. Rachel practically grabbed the tablet. "Can you zoom in?" Marjorie grinned. "My grandson says I zoom better than the FBI." After several tries, the numbers became readable. Rachel immediately called the manufacturer. 45 minutes later, she hung up and looked at me. "The physical camera may be gone, but the cloud account is still active." The preservation order had reached the company before anyone deleted the recordings. The next morning, Rachel and I sat in front of her office computer as the first recovered video loaded. It lasted only 32 seconds. 32 seconds was enough. Vanessa stood in the hallway. Lily stood in front of her. "Stop crying!" Vanessa snapped. When Lily couldn't, Vanessa pinched her arm hard enough to make her scream. Daniel adjusted the camera. "No," he said calmly. "Let her cry a little more." Then he looked directly into the lens. "When Rebecca loses it, we'll finally have what we need." I couldn't watch another second. I pushed away from the desk and ran into the hallway bathroom. I barely made it to the sink before I got sick. When I finally came back, Rachel was quietly closing the laptop. "There are more videos. I don't want to see them." "You don't have to." I sat down heavily. Every part of me wanted to drive straight to my house and confront them. Rachel placed a folder in front of me. "That's exactly what they're still hoping you'll do." I looked at her. She smiled gently. "No more giving them what they want." Then she opened the last page of the evidence log. One sentence stopped both of us cold. Daniel's voice, perfectly clear. "Once we win custody, half of Rebecca's military pension will solve all our money problems." The recording should have ended everything. It didn't. I had Daniel admitting he planned to provoke me. I had Vanessa hurting my daughter on camera. I had proof they were trying to use my military pension to fund their future. And yet, 3 days later, Rachel called with news I never expected. They're challenging every piece of it. On what grounds? They're claiming the footage was obtained illegally. I let out a tired laugh. They recorded themselves committing child abuse. I know. And somehow we're the problem. Welcome to family court. It wasn't sarcasm. It was experience. Daniel's attorney argued that the videos lacked context. Vanessa claimed she had only pinched Lily to keep her from running toward the stairs. Daniel insisted his comments about my pension had been taken as a joke. None of it made any sense, but it slowed everything down. Instead of immediately changing custody, the judge ordered more evaluations, more interviews, more paperwork, more waiting. Waiting was something I'd learned in the Army. Waiting for transport, waiting for intelligence, waiting for orders. But waiting while my daughter slept somewhere else, that was a different kind of pain. Then another blow landed. Colonel Denise Carter called me into her office at Fort Belvoir. She closed the door before speaking. "This isn't disciplinary, I understand. But because of the allegations and the ongoing investigation," she slid a folder across her desk. "Your security clearance is being placed under administrative review." I looked at the paper. Temporary reassignment. No classified systems. No intelligence briefings, desk duty. I nodded once. "When does it start?" "Tomorrow." She studied my face. "You expected to be angry." "I am, but anger won't change the paperwork." For the first time since coming home, I felt tired. Not physically, emotionally. Everything I'd worked for over 23 years suddenly felt fragile. As I left headquarters, I passed younger soldiers heading toward the secure building where I'd spent most of my career. One of them saluted. I returned it automatically. Then I walked to the parking lot, wondering if my career had just ended because of my husband's lies. The gossip spread quickly. Military communities are close. Sometimes too close. One spouse I barely knew stopped me outside the commissary. I heard things are pretty messy. I forced a smile. They are. She hesitated. Well, there are always two sides to every story. She meant well. Maybe. But those words stayed with me all afternoon. That evening I sat in my hotel room staring at my phone. I almost called Daniel. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him how he could do this to Lily. Instead, I opened a blank notebook. Dr. Harris, the therapist Rachel had recommended, suggested writing letters to Lily. Letters I wouldn't send. Not yet. The first one began with only one sentence. Dear Lily, none of this is your fault. I filled 6 pages before realizing I was crying. The next morning I met Rachel again. She had another stack of financial records waiting. I traced the LLC. What did you find? It never helped military families. I figured. It helped exactly 2 people. She pointed at highlighted transactions. Vanessa's SUV. Vanessa's credit cards. Vanessa's shopping trips. Then she turned one final page. A payment to the Stafford Regional Chamber of Commerce. Purpose. Holiday Community Leadership Gala sponsorship. Rachel looked up. Guess who's receiving the Community Family Champion Award on Christmas Eve? I didn't need to answer. She already knew. Daniel. She nodded. And that donation came directly from your deployment savings. I rubbed my forehead. So he used my money, and to buy an award honoring himself. Exactly. 2 days later, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar local number. Rebecca Hale. Yes. My name is Tom Reynolds. I'm chairman of the Stafford VFW Holiday Fundraiser. I recognized the event immediately. We'd be honored if you'd attend. I frowned. I'm not sure that's appropriate. Actually, he chuckled. Daniel specifically requested you. Me? He wants to surprise everyone by bringing you on stage. I felt my stomach tighten. For what? Tom answered without realizing what he was saying. He wants everyone to see what a strong military marriage looks like. After we hung up, Rachel slowly leaned back in her chair. He thinks you won't come. I wasn't planning to. I think you should. I looked at her. She smiled. Sometimes the best place to tell the truth is exactly where the lie was supposed to be celebrated. By Christmas Eve morning, the entire county seemed to know my name. Unfortunately, they didn't know the truth. Someone had posted a 30-second video on Facebook the night before. It showed me standing on my own front porch, knocking on the door and demanding to see Lily. That was all. No frightened child. No bruises. No Vanessa. No context. Just me. The caption read, Returning soldier suffers emotional breakdown after deployment. By breakfast, it had been shared hundreds of times. By lunchtime, strangers were calling me unstable. One comment hit harder than the rest. That little girl deserves a mother who actually wants to be home. I stared at the screen until the words blurred together. Then I turned the phone off. There was no point arguing with people who had been shown only half the story. Around noon, I drove to Aunt Carol's house for my scheduled visit with Lily. She met me at the door wearing fuzzy red socks and holding something behind her back. I made you something. What is it? She smiled for the first time in days. A surprise. She pulled out a tiny Christmas ornament made from popsicle sticks and glitter. Across the front in crooked little letters she had written, Mommy came back. I couldn't speak. I just pulled her into my arms. I missed you, she whispered. I missed you too. She touched the medals on my uniform. Are you staying? I'm staying. For always, I smiled through tears. I'm going to do everything I can. She nodded as though that answer was enough. Sometimes children don't need promises. They just need honesty. When our visit ended, Rachel met me outside. You look better. Lily helped. Rachel glanced at the ornament in my hand. That's worth more than any courtroom victory. She was right. I'd almost forgotten why I was fighting. Not to punish Daniel. Not to humiliate Vanessa. To make sure Lily never had to be afraid inside her own home again. Rachel handed me a folder. Everything's ready. Inside were certified bank records, the cloud storage authentication, ring camera footage, medical reports, photographs, witness statements from Marjorie. The complete timeline. Nothing dramatic. Just facts. The kind facts eventually become That evening I parked outside the Fredericksburg FW Hall. Christmas lights wrapped around the entrance. Veterans in sport coats greeted arriving guests. Local business owners carried wrapped toys for the holiday charity auction. Inside, someone played old Bing Crosby songs through the speakers. It should have felt festive. Instead, it felt like walking toward a courtroom with Christmas decorations. Marjorie waved the second she spotted me. She was wearing a bright green sweater covered in sequined reindeer. "I figured if we're ruining somebody's evening," she whispered, "I might as well dress for the occasion." I couldn't help laughing. "You look impossible to ignore." "That's been my greatest strength since 1974. Rachel joined us a moment later. "No surprises tonight." Marjorie looked offended. "I make no promises." Just then a familiar voice echoed from backstage. "Lily, stand right here." Every muscle in my body froze. I looked through the partially open curtain. Vanessa was kneeling beside Lily, straightening the bow on her red Christmas dress. Daniel stood nearby, adjusting his tie. A photographer was arranging lights. I turned toward Rachel. "Why is Lily here?" Rachel's expression hardened. "She shouldn't be." Daniel had somehow brought her to the fundraiser. He wasn't just accepting an award. He was planning to put our daughter on stage as part of the performance. I started walking. Rachel caught my arm. "Rebecca." "I have to get her." "You will." I looked at her, but not like this. Before I could answer, one of the event volunteers hurried toward us. "Mrs. Hale." "Yes." "They're about to begin." I glanced back toward the stage. Daniel smiled confidently at the growing crowd. He had no idea the bank's regional compliance director had quietly taken a seat in the front row, or that 2 child welfare investigators had entered through the side door, or that 3 sheriff's deputies were now standing near the back of the room. He thought tonight was his victory lap. He couldn't have been more wrong. The ballroom lights dimmed as the master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage. "Good evening, everyone, and Merry Christmas." Applause filled the room. I barely heard it. My eyes never left Lily. She stood beside Vanessa, wearing a velvet red dress, white tights, and little black shoes. Someone had curled her hair. From across the room, she looked like the picture of a happy little girl. But I knew my daughter. She kept twisting the hem of her dress between her fingers whenever she was scared. She was doing it now. Daniel caught sight of me near the back of the ballroom. For just a second, surprise flashed across his face, then it disappeared. He smiled. That same practiced smile I'd seen him use at bank dinners, neighborhood barbecues, church fundraisers. The smile that convinced everyone he was the nicest man in the room. He excused himself from a group of guests and walked toward me. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I almost didn't." He nodded. "Probably for the best if you stay in the audience." "I came to see my daughter." "So did everyone else." His voice remained calm. "So let's not make a scene." There it was again. The bait. Always the bait. Rachel had warned me. He wanted witnesses. He wanted another video. He wanted Rebecca Hale, the unstable military wife, to lose control in public. I forced myself to breathe slowly. "I only want to talk to Lily." "You'll have your chance." He glanced toward the stage. "After the ceremony, I'll decide when I see my daughter." His smile faded. "You really haven't learned." Before I could answer, Vanessa appeared carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Oh," she said sweetly. "I didn't realize our guest had arrived." She deliberately emphasized the word guest, as though I were visiting someone else's life. She leaned down toward Lily. "Come on, sweetheart." Lily didn't move. Vanessa reached for her hand. The second Vanessa touched her wrist, Lily flinched. Instinct took over. I stepped forward. "Don't touch my daughter." Vanessa tightened her grip. "She's fine." "Let her go." People nearby began turning their heads. Phones slowly appeared. "Exactly like Daniel wanted." Vanessa smiled. Almost daring me. I reached out and grabbed her wrist. Not hard. Just enough to stop her. For one dangerous second. The room went completely silent. Daniel immediately raised his voice. "Rebecca," several guests gasped. A man near the stage lifted his phone higher. I realized what was happening. Again, the same trap. Different room. Different audience. I slowly released Vanessa's wrist and stepped backward. "I'm not doing this." Vanessa looked disappointed. Daniel looked even more disappointed. Rachel quietly appeared beside me. "You caught yourself." "Barely. That's enough." My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From anger. Years in the army had taught me how to stay calm under enemy fire. Nobody had ever taught me how to stay calm while someone frightened my child. The child welfare investigator walked over. She knelt beside Lily. "Honey," She smiled gently. Would you like to come sit with me for a little while? Lily nodded immediately. Without looking at Daniel, without looking at Vanessa, she simply reached for the investigator's hand. That tiny decision spoke louder than any testimony. As they walked away, Daniel tried one last time. You see, he called after them. Rebecca upset her. The investigator stopped. She turned around slowly. No. Her voice remained perfectly calm. Your daughter looked relieved the moment she walked away from both of you. Daniel's face tightened. For the first time all evening, his confidence cracked. I slipped into the ladies' room a few minutes later, locked myself inside a stall, and cried. Not because I was weak, because I had come within inches of giving Daniel exactly what he wanted. Rachel found me several minutes later. You okay? I wanted to hit her. I know. I've never wanted to hit anyone before. Rachel nodded. Wanting revenge doesn't make you a bad person. She handed me a tissue. What matters is what you do next. I wiped my eyes. I'm done thinking about revenge. She smiled. Good. Now I just want the truth. Rachel laughed softly. That's even more dangerous for them. Outside applause erupted. The announcer's voice echoed through the ballroom. Please welcome this year's Community Family Champion, Mr. Daniel Hale. Daniel walked onto the stage waving confidently to the crowd. He had no idea that the bank's compliance director was sitting in the front row with a thick investigation file on his lap, or that 3 sheriff's detectives had quietly taken seats along the side wall. His speech was about to begin. So was the end of every lie he'd built. Daniel walked onto the stage to a standing ovation. The applause echoed through the VFW hall as he smiled, waved and shook hands with veterans, business owners, and local officials. Behind him, a slideshow filled the large screen with photographs of military families. There were pictures of welcome home ceremonies, children hugging parents in uniform, American flags, Christmas trees. Then one of my deployment photos appeared. It showed me standing with my unit overseas. The caption underneath read, While Rebecca served our country, Daniel served their family. My stomach turned. He had built an entire speech around my military service. Without my permission, Daniel adjusted the microphone. Thank you, he began. This award doesn't belong to me alone. He smiled toward the audience. It belongs to every military spouse who quietly keeps the family together while their loved one serves overseas. More applause. He looked humble, grateful, almost believable. I've always believed our daughter deserved stability. He paused dramatically, and sometimes that meant making difficult choices. Vanessa smiled proudly from the front row. Daniel reached toward her. I couldn't have done any of this without Vanessa. The audience applauded again. Someone behind me whispered, What a wonderful family. Rachel leaned toward me. Almost, Daniel continued. Military life demands sacrifice. He looked directly at me. And forgiveness. Then he smiled. I'm grateful Rebecca could join us tonight. A spotlight found me near the side of the room. Several people turned. Daniel stretched out one arm. Rebecca, would you join me on stage? Every eye in the room shifted toward me. Rachel quietly whispered, Stay calm. I stood, smoothed the front of my dress uniform, then walked onto the stage. Daniel reached out as if we were about to pose for a family photograph. I ignored his hand. Instead, I turned toward the master of ceremonies. May I say something? He looked uncertain, then nodded. Of course. I stepped to the microphone. My husband is right about one thing. The room fell silent. Military families make sacrifices. I looked toward the veterans seated in the front rows. You know that better than anyone. Several nodded. I continued. But sacrifice only means something when it's honored. I turned toward Daniel. Not exploited. His smile disappeared. I reached into the folder Rachel had handed me moments earlier. Mr. Reynolds. I looked toward the event chairman. Would you mind playing one short video? Daniel's face changed instantly. What video? The chairman looked toward the audiovisual technician. Rachel quietly handed him a flash drive. Within seconds, the giant screen went black. Then the recovered security footage appeared. The date, December 22nd. The front doorway. Lily standing exactly where I'd found her. The audience watched in complete silence. Then they heard my little girl's trembling voice. Daddy said, and if I let Mommy in, she'll hurt me again? A murmur spread through the room. Daniel stepped toward the screen. That's completely out of context. Nobody answered. The next clip began. Vanessa stood over Lily. You're not crying hard enough. She pinched Lily's arm. My daughter cried out. Daniel adjusted the camera. Then his own voice filled the ballroom. Let her cry a little more. He looked directly into the lens. When Rebecca loses it, we'll finally have what we need. Nobody applauded now. Nobody moved. The room had become so quiet I could hear the heating system humming above us. Daniel grabbed the microphone. This has been edited. Rachel calmly walked onto the stage carrying certified documents. It hasn't. She handed copies to the event chairman, the sheriff's detective, and the bank's regional compliance director. The compliance director stood. Mr. Hale. His voice was firm. Effective immediately, you're being placed on administrative suspension pending a fraud investigation involving company ethics and financial misconduct. Daniel stared at him. What? The detective stepped forward next. We also have a warrant regarding evidence tampering and allegations of child abuse. Vanessa suddenly stood. This wasn't my idea. Daniel turned toward her. What are you doing? You said nobody would ever find the videos. The room erupted. They began arguing with each other. Not quietly. Not carefully. The microphones were still live. Every accusation echoed through the ballroom. You told me we'd get her pension, Vanessa shouted. Daniel pointed at her. You were the one who kept hitting the kid. Gasps swept across the audience. Marjorie leaned toward the woman sitting beside her and said loud enough for half the room to hear, I believe that's what lawyers call terrible timing. A few stunned laughs broke the silence. I walked over to the microphone one last time. I didn't yell. I didn't insult either of them. I simply looked at Daniel. You used my service to build your reputation. Then I looked at Vanessa. You used a 4-year-old little girl to help destroy her own mother. Finally, I looked toward the audience. You don't get to call that family. At that moment, Lily slipped away from the child welfare investigator. She ran across the ballroom, straight into my arms. I dropped to my knees and held her as tightly as I could. For the first time since I came home, she wasn't afraid. People sometimes ask me if justice felt as good as I imagined it would. The truth, not really. Relief feels different than revenge. The courtroom hearings stretched over the next 9 months. Nothing happened overnight. Daniel was suspended from the bank within 24 hours of the fundraiser. A month later, he was fired after an internal audit confirmed he had misused financial authority, falsified documents, and diverted money into the fake consulting company. Vanessa accepted a plea agreement instead of risking a trial. She received probation, mandatory parenting and anger management classes, and a permanent order prohibiting unsupervised contact with Lily. Neither of them ever admitted they had planned everything from the beginning. They didn't have to. The evidence spoke louder than they ever could. The divorce wasn't easy. There were days I wanted to give up. Days when I wondered whether fighting had only made Lily's life harder. Family court doesn't move at the speed of heartbreak. It moves at the speed of paperwork. Eventually, the judge awarded me primary physical custody. Daniel received supervised visitation after completing counseling. The court also ordered him to repay part of the money he had taken. Not all of it. Some of it was simply gone. The refinance on the house couldn't be undone. Every time Lily drove past that neighborhood, she became quiet. One afternoon, she looked out the car window and whispered, I don't want to live there anymore. Neither did I. So I sold the house. Not because Daniel had ruined it. Because Lily deserved a place where every room felt safe. We rented a modest townhouse in Fredericksburg with white shutters, a tiny fenced backyard, and just enough space for the two of us. The first night there, Lily ran from room to room laughing. Mommy, what is it? Nobody lives here but us. I laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. No, sweetheart. Just us. My security clearance was eventually restored after the investigation cleared me of every allegation. Colonel Carter called me into her office one last time. I've got your assignment orders. I looked down at the paperwork. Stateside, Fort Belvoir. No more overseas deployments. You requested this. I did. She smiled knowingly. Any regrets? I thought about it. The Army had given me purpose. It had also taken me away from home. But the Army had never betrayed me. People had. I've served my country for 23 years, I said. Now I need to serve one little girl. Colonel Carter stood and shook my hand. I think that's your most important assignment. The following Christmas looked nothing like the one before. No grand decorations. No expensive dinners. No giant tree. Just a small artificial tree from Home Depot. Homemade sugar cookies. Hot chocolate. A string of colorful lights around the living room window. While decorating, Lily opened a small box. Inside was the ornament she had made during our supervised visit. The one with crooked glitter letters. Mommy came back. She smiled. Can we hang this first? We absolutely can. She carefully placed it near the top of the tree. Then she stepped back to admire it. It belongs where everyone can see it. I realized she wasn't talking about the ornament. She was talking about us. For a long time I thought coming home meant walking through my own front door. Now I know better. Home isn't a house. It isn't a title. It isn't even a marriage. Home is the place where your child feels safe enough to fall asleep without fear. If you've stayed with me until the end, thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know what you would have done if you had been standing at that front door. And if someone you love is suddenly quieter than they used to be, don't ignore it. Sometimes the smallest voice is the one asking for help the most. The end.